a green light here, folks. We'll start the meeting. Well, good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Edina City Council meeting. It is Wednesday, March 6, 2024, 7:01 p.m. And as Director Bennerat mentioned, for those of you that were here a bit earlier, we are continuing to do these meetings in a hybrid fashion. We've been doing it during COVID and post-COVID periods. I guess maybe about the last 4 years now is the way things have gone. And so some folks feel more comfortable just tuning in virtually, watching on cable TV or edinamn.gov live meetings or on facebook.com. And then we have some folks that'll be here participating live in either the public hearing matters we have or community comment. And I'm going to put that number up on the screen that we have for calling in for either community comment or public hearing. And remember, with community comment, you are not allowed to talk about anything that's on the agenda this evening or scheduled for a future public hearing. And having provided that information, and we'll get back to that number just shortly here because the community comment comes up fairly quickly in the agenda. Let's call the meeting to order, and I will ask our clerk, Sharon Ellison, to call the roll of the council. Clerk Ellison.
Councilmember Agnew. Here. Councilmember Jackson. Here. Councilmember Pierce.
Here.
Councilmember Risser.
Here.
Mayor Hovland.
Here. Let's next do the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We've got a form of meeting agenda in front of us this evening. Is there anyone in the council wishes to modify the agenda in any form or fashion, or staff? Is there a motion to approve the meeting agenda as published?
So moved. A second.
Member Jackson moves. Member Agnew seconds the adoption of the meeting agenda for this March 6, 2024 meeting of the Edina City Council as published. Any further discussion? All those in favor of adoption of the motion as stated say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Carried. And now we are at community comment. Back at community comment. Let's get that call-in number on the screen. And then we're going to hear from folks in our audience first, residents that have a concern or a comment they wish to make. And start with Mr. Zickert. Welcome.
My name is Ralph Sickert. I live at 4311 Cornelia Circle. Council members, residents of Edina. In December and January city council meetings, we heard the city manager and the mayor share their rosy perspectives on 2023 accomplishments. Meanwhile, this past year, staff and consultants presented a recommendation to build Fire Station 2 in Roslyn Park, a proposal soundly rebuffed by residents and unanimously rejected by the council. Meanwhile, this past year, staff and consultants presented a clean water strategy, a strategy so poorly thought out it wasn't even put to a vote by the council, and a project that is now 5 years past due. Meanwhile, this past year, staff and consultants presented a budget levy with a 14% increase for 2024 and a 15% increase for 2025, and almost 30% increase in spending that not a single council member could message. But that was somewhat understandable, because to paraphrase Mr. Neal, he hadn't been able to figure out how to message a budget in 30 years. Meanwhile, this past year, staff and consultants presented utility rates that resulted in 80% of commercial customers paying less in 2024 than they did in 2022 for water. A point when first shared last spring was called out by 2 council members as a red flag. But not until last week was it acknowledged by staff. Meanwhile, some 14 months after the fact, staff just realized that the liquor store performance for 2022 was one of the worst in the last 10 years, and that staff was just now looking at it and would be hiring a consultant. That's my scorecard for 2023. And as author Jim Collins would suggest, it's time to face the brutal facts. There is one common thread through all these events: a lack of leadership. A view voiced often by residents and confirmed time and time again by the council. So, what will it take to hold such shoddy performance accountable? Thank you.
My name is Jim Groats. I live at 5513 Park Place. And my item tonight grew out of a work session I attended on the legislative agenda. And the city manager was talking about lodging taxes and so on and so forth and changing the law at the legislature. And the first item I have here, I decided after I heard this, I'd go back and I'd do some spot checking of data. And I've done this in the past where I just kind of randomly pick here and there. Came across this very interesting item. This is a payable, and it ended up going to Explore Edina for the lodging tax. And the amount that was paid was $59,300 plus. And it shows here the payment of $50,000 came out of the general fund, and $9,004 came out of the Edinburgh Park Fund. And the city acknowledges these are restricted funds. And my point is that all of this should be coming out of the restricted funds account for the lodging taxes. And how did it come to be that restricted funds from lodging taxes, which the city acknowledges are restricted funds, ended up over in Edinburgh Park? And here is page 2, which shows it went to Edinburgh Park. It went to Explore Edina, lodging tax, $59,000. And again, going back to page 1, it's not coming out of a restricted fund. It's coming out of the general fund and not an Edinburgh Park Fund. I need some explanations as to how our accounting has gone this far south. And talk about red flags. We are flipping finance directors. None of them are CPAs that we're hiring. This is a red flag. It's a red flag in my business, in any business. And I need some answers, and I will leave these here for Jennifer, these 2 items, and I would prefer to have the answer to this by Manager Neal at the next council meeting. And thank you, and please take a look at this. We all need explanation. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Groats. We'll take a look at it.
David Frankel, 4510 Lakeview Drive, Edina. I'm here basically to put something on public record that's, I guess, been swept under the carpet a little bit. I made a data request over 2 weeks ago for information from the City of Edina dealing with data requests from the United States Department of Justice. I received this letter dated January 26, 2024, from the U.S. Department of Justice to myself. Dear Mr. Frankel, the United States Attorney's Office for the District of Minnesota is opening an investigation of your complaint alleging that the entity named above has violated the Americans with Disability Act of 1990. As you're probably aware, this is in reference to the bridge over here at the Public Works site that myself and others have questioned whether it's been ADA compliant. And all we've gotten is, don't worry about it, it's an imperfect project, it is ADA compliant. I've talked to numerous architects who are experts in this area. I've talked to the project manager for the city of Minneapolis, who deals exclusively in ADA issues. Everyone is wondering what is going on with this project. And now you have the United States Department of Justice involved. What I requested 2 weeks ago, I'd like to get the information that the U.S. Department of Justice has sent to the city of Edina. I assume, since I've been informed about this, that the city knows about it. And if they don't, I'll be happy to have the U.S. Attorney call somebody tomorrow morning. All I'm asking for is feedback of public information from the city of Edina that it has not been disclosed to the public yet. Why am I here asking for this? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Frankel. I'm sure they'll respond to your data request. Anyone else?
Meanwhile, my name is Floyd Grable. I live at 7510 Cahill Road, apartment 312B, here in Edina. I want to thank you all for your service. I served 9 years on the Planning Commission, and I was very proud of my service there, and I commend you for the service that you're giving to the city of Edina. I would like to call to your attention something tonight that is impacting many residents in the city, and you may have heard it, but it involves insurance. Windwood is a condominium. It was built in the 70s. We have some 206 units. It's a large condominium project. Condominiums like Windwood and cooperative housing associations are required by state law to have insurance. So we have insurance. There's a crisis going on in the insurance market right now. This last year, American Family non-renewed our insurance. And after a diligent search, we had no admitted company offer us an insurance policy. Because no admitted company was able to offer us an insurance policy, we were required to go to the excess and surplus lines insurance. Our insurance premium last year was $147,000. This year, our insurance premium is $650,000. Now, Windwood is not, legally speaking, an affordable housing place. But in fact, we are an affordable place to live, and that's important. What is happening is the insurance companies have considered Minnesota to be a catastrophic state because of hail and windstorm damage, and they are not renewing coverage. If a building was built before 1990, or the value of the building is over $25,000, companies like American Family, Hallmark, Hartford, Liberty Mutual, Midwest Family, Nationwide, all of these admitted companies will not offer insurance, and thus condominiums and cooperatives are required to go elsewhere because we have to have the insurance, and we have to go to the excess and surplus lines market. I'm on the board. We have residents who have lived at Windwood for years and years, and this puts just a huge, huge burden on our residents. Now, what am I asking the council to do? You can't fix this, but I would really appreciate it, and our residents would really appreciate it, if every time you are contacting some public official at whatever level it is, if you would bring this matter up and let people know that this is just really hurting some residents of this city, residents of other cities. If you're a condo and you're going to be renewed this year, you're going to get banged just like Windwood has. So that's my message tonight. I hope you'll give this some consideration and help us spread the message. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Graybill. Quite stunning news, really. Really.
It was stunning to us. I'll tell you that.
Yeah. Well, you know, over in North Dakota, they got a state bank. Maybe we should have a state insurance company.
Wouldn't be a bad idea. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you,
All right.
Council.
Anyone else in the audience wish to address the council on a matter of concern to them? All right, let's go to the folks who may be listening in online.
I have no callers tonight.
All right, our relatively new practice is that we're going to try to get answers on these comments that were made this evening by some of our residents on our city website by Friday. Probably end of business Friday, is that what you've usually been shooting for? And then Manager Neal will give an update that supplements that information that goes on the website at the subsequent council meeting. And so we turn to him now for any responses that he may have to community comments that were made at the prior meeting a couple of weeks ago. Manager Neal.
Thank you, Your Honor, and members of council. We had 10 questions at our February 20th meeting, and as you noted, we answered those questions, and I think we had 9 out of the 10, if I'm remembering that right, Jennifer. Or did all 10 get on by Friday? Okay, by 10 by Friday. So I'll do a summary. I'll do a quick summary of those questions and the responses. First question was, do you have any update on the assault that occurred at the Amundsen Flats on February 12th? Yes, 5 adult suspects were identified. They were arrested the night of the assault. They've been charged with custody of felony level crimes, which means they'll be prosecuted by the county, by Hennepin County. There are still 2 people at large, and they will be found, I think, at some point soon. What can be done to reduce, the second question is, what can be done to reduce the risk of crime when future housing developments are considered by the city? When the city has an affordable housing developer come to us and start a discussion, one of the discussion pieces we have with those folks is how do they manage their buildings. That's management of the building is very important to us, and in fact, we're meeting with the Amundsen Flats management after a couple of cancellations. We have them coming in to meet tomorrow morning to talk about management of their building. Third question is the city moving forward with the small area plan for the Lincoln Londonderry Drive area? The answer to that is yes. We updated you just a little bit ago on what's happening with that. We had the Planning Commission has appointed its representatives. We are still taking applications to be part of the working group that closes on March 8th. We had 6 different consulting groups or teams pose or at least express interest in being our partner. The group is going to interview 3 of those, and those interviews are coming up soon. Fourth question is there's talk of a tunnel under France Avenue, but it is in a flood zone. Is the project viable? The Edina HRA recently hired LHB architects to study that question. They are studying that question. Future public improvements could be below the roadway or over the roadway if the flood issue is just too big to overcome. So based on those discussions and based on our previous work with LHB in this area, we selected them. That's kind of comes to the next question is, was the city's purchasing policy followed by the HRA when the contract was awarded and determined to study this project? We also say yes, it was. On February 15th, 2024, the EDA entered into an $80,000 professional services agreement with LHB to advance the conceptual design of the grade-separated pedestrian crossing. We felt that they were the best qualified consulting partner for this work, given the level of work they had already invested into the project. We felt they had a head start. We had good working relationship with them, and they gave us a reasonable price to conduct that work. And so we thought that was those were all practical decisions in their selection. The next question was, why is the community comment limited at Planning Commission and City Council meetings? Is that a practice in alignment with state law? Is this the question about 3 minutes? Okay. Most cities choose some limitation on the length of community comment. It varies from 2 minutes to 5 minutes to 10 minutes. Ours has been set at 3 minutes for many, many years. It was set like that before I got here. I don't know where that is, why that is, but I know that's what we have had here. We haven't really had many discussions about it during my time in Edina, but it can be set at whatever level the council feels it should be set at. Next question, though, was interesting too, and that's why does the HRA meet at 7:30 in the morning? The reason for that is that for a good part of the teens, 2014, 15, 16, we were having a long stretch of meetings where the HRA meeting followed the council meeting. So the city council would have a council meeting, they would adjourn it, and then they would open the HRA meeting. And there were many times when that HRA meeting was starting after 10 o'clock, sometimes after 11 o'clock at night. We found that we didn't have any audience really with us at that point, and it was difficult for some of the members to conduct business at that time. We even had times when the meeting would drift into the next day, right? So it would drift into the following Wednesday, and we had some challenges on that, right? That we advertised the meeting for a Tuesday, some of it occurred on a Wednesday. Was that valid? So we had to face those challenges as well. We moved as an experiment, the HRA meeting to 7:30 a.m. on Thursday mornings. And I can tell you from my experience, we have a great deal more people that are in our audience at 7:30 a.m. than we do at 11 p.m. Neither one of those times is a very good time to have a public meeting. But when you given the schedule and the workload of the council, there just aren't a lot of great options for that. But it is the scheduling of those meeting times and days are the discretion of the council, and the council can change them. The next question is, why are council members also HRA commissioners? Again, that's a practice that predates me. It's a practice that is pretty common in Minnesota cities with HRAs. And again, it's up to the council to change that if they wish. How soon can a work session be scheduled to further discuss the city's tree ordinance? We have scheduled that work session for May 7th. And finally, when will the city's crime map be updated and available online? We hope that's going to happen in the next 30 days, if not sooner. We're working with our software vendor, trying to get some bugs out of the final product, but that's the time frame. And that's all I got.
Councilmember Jackson.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Would it be possible to put on this memo in the future a link to the web page that has the long answers? Okay, that'd be great. Thank you.
You and I talked the other day about the tree ordinance, and I had been looking at the language around letter of credit versus cash deposit. And is that something that you might potentially address before we get to that May meeting?
Oh, it is. I want to talk about that tonight during my report.
Okay. All right, good. I think that's a good thing to be talking about. Yep. Could solve a lot of problems on an interim basis. All right, that cause anything from any other council members? Member Risser?
I want to say that I do really appreciate the new system where we're putting things online. I think it is important to make sure that the questions people ask are put in context. And it wasn't simply a question of why does it meet at 7:30 a.m. It was, this is a problematic time for people to participate. And yes, it's hard to find other times, but I really do think resident Janie Weston's point that 7:30 a.m. makes it hard for parents who are trying to get kids off to school to participate. And even though you can do it online, that doesn't really fix the situation if you're, making lunches and all that. The other thing is for people who are trying to get to work at 8 o'clock in the morning, it's not a viable time either. So maybe at one of our work sessions, we could talk about if there is a possibility of having evening HRA meeting like other cities do. I just want to float that. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, we could take that up for a little bit of brief conversation when we get to concerns of council and mayor at the end of the meeting tonight, but certainly could take it up in April as well. All right. Next part of the agenda is the adoption of the consent agenda. We've got two council members that wish to have two items removed from the consent agenda for discussion. The first one is item 6A. Member Risser would like to have those minutes removed. That's the work session and regular meeting minutes for February 2024. And Member Agnew would like to have the traffic safety report of January 30, 2024 removed from the consent agenda, and that is 6I. So with the exception of 6A and 6I, is there a motion to approve the balance of the items on the consent agenda in a single motion?
So moved.
I second.
Member Jackson moves, Member Agnew seconds the adoption of the items on the consent agenda with the exception of items 6A and 6I. Any further discussion? All those in favor of adoption of the motion stated, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. And then let's go back to 6A and Member Risser's thoughts there.
This is an issue that I have brought up before where council participation is just summarized as the council asked questions and provided feedback. And we did get an email from a resident who was concerned about the lack of inclusion of council comments, particularly with the sketch plan for 5780 Lincoln Drive. And as you read through the very detailed and well summarized account of the staff presentation, individual staff members, individual people from the development team. There's a paragraph for each, Amal Dixit, Mindy, Kayla, I don't know if I'm saying that right, Jason Lord, Asher Gavzi, each one gets their own paragraph. And what's missing is the council commentary. And none of the people who commented and none of the summary information mentioned small area plan. So that's completely missing. There's not a lot of detail about the problematic issue of sewer costs. There's nothing about the disparity between enhancing Edina's sewer capacity versus Minnetonka's. And I think my colleague, Member Jackson, made a very, it's a point that made an impression on me that this is a matter of public health. And I think each of us actually brought something to the table, and I was impressed with what my colleagues had to say, and I think it merits putting that in the minutes. For the working session minutes, we were asked to make a decision regarding the Edina Historical Society, and we did make that decision, but again, there's no summary of what led to that decision. And I do know that there are specific requirements that the state of Minnesota, the state office of the auditor puts out, and it notes there will be instances where it would be wise for a governing body to include in the minutes information in addition to what is required to satisfy minimum statutory requirements, those being the way people vote on issues. For example, a governing body's reasons for reaching a particular decision may be important for defending a challenge to the action taken. So, I will keep bringing this up, but I really feel that when the minutes do not include a summary of what we bring to the table, they are not complete.
All right, thanks for those comments. Director Benner, we've talked about this recently and then in years gone by as well, and I see the point that Member Risser is making. There is some detail around the presentation by the applicant, which you'd expect in a sketch plan review. Not much about council other than saying they asked questions and provided feedback. What are your thoughts on whether the minutes ought to be slightly more comprehensive, understanding they're not the principal record that we're trying to keep here? It's not their function. What are your thoughts?
I think this is a question best answered by our city clerk and our city attorney. I can give you historical context again that when the council last discussed this issue, the decision of the group was to have shorter meeting minutes and rely on the video so a person could hear directly what was said.
Clerk Allison?
That is correct, Mr. Mayor, that it was decided several years back that the minutes would be summary style rather than details, and that the video would provide the details.
And Member Risser, did you want to ask a question? I was going to turn to Mr. Kendall and ask him.
So just for clarification, if we have a member of the public wanting to come in and look at the meeting minutes, and my understanding, and it could be incorrect, is that we are supposed to have those available to anyone who comes in and wants to look at the minutes. They are supposed to come with a laptop or their phone and then go online and seek out the video when they see, they don't get a comprehensive view of it. My understanding is we needed to have something that the public could easily access.
Mr. Kendall, your thoughts, please?
Mayor, I think the city's minutes meet statutory requirements. If the council wants to direct staff to take more detailed notes, the council can do that. But the minutes meet the requirements of law. I mean, it's I think a kind of a policy decision whether you want to have the minutes be more detailed, or I do think that people will rely on the video as the main record of what was said and done at the meeting.
And how would people access the video, to Member Risser's point?
It's quite easy to access the video. It's free, and you can do it from home, wherever you are.
I'll be honest with you that when we started this practice, we were making DVD copies and making them available at the libraries. And then the library asked us to stop bringing the DVDs because they were collecting dust and they'd never been accessed. I think an appropriate thing to do for a member of the community who can't access a kiosk at the library to view it online, we could certainly make a meeting room available for that need if that issue came up. Don't you think?
But can't they access it online?
Yeah.
Sure, but if you don't have a computer, if you don't have a
Sure.
phone, we would want to help a resident out.
Manager Neal, then Member Risser.
Mr. Mayor, members of council, I think minutes are one of those items that do have kind of a cycle to them. They come to the council, there's a lot of discussion, you settle on what you want to do, and then it becomes dormant, and we just kind of roll with the practices that the council has approved. So maybe that's where we are again. I've reached out to the League of Cities today to seek some guidance from them on minutes best practices. They have some folks they could put into contact with us if we wanted to have this. There's several other kind of administrative meeting-related issues that we would like to package into a work session, and this would be one of those questions that you could have. It's ultimately needs to be resolved by the council and by a majority of the council.
All right, Member Risser.
Respectfully, I think a lot of people do not have the time to listen to the entire video, and so minutes provide a summary of that. And I would appreciate having another dialogue about it. And I think, I'm not asking that there's a detailed description of what council says for every single thing, but, for example, this was a really important sketch plan that a lot of people came to hear about, and I think there are certain items where it would make sense to provide the kind of analysis that staff receives and the developer in this case receives, and this would be an example of that. So I welcome the idea to revisit this, and I think in terms of providing a balanced narrative, the council voice should be present. Thank you.
All right. Do you feel comfortable moving the approval of those minutes, work session and regular, or would you prefer to have someone else do it?
So moved.
A second.
Got a motion second to approve the minutes of the work session and the regular meeting of the City Council on February 20, 2024. Any further discussion? All those in favor of adoption of the motion as stated say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Carried. And then we'll turn to Member Agnew, and it is item 6I, the traffic safety report of January 30, 2024. Member Agnew.
Thank you. There were a couple of requests in this report for sidewalks. And the recommendation by staff was to take no action on either of those cases, citing that, crosswalk warrants are not met. And I, in reading through this, I'm usually of the mindset that well, a sidewalk would lead to more pedestrian safety. And I'm kind of curious to understand what would warrant a crosswalk, and how do we as a city make that decision? And I particularly think that that's helpful for members of the community to understand that crosswalks can sometimes make things more safe and sometimes make things less safe. And there is a lot of consideration that goes into it that I don't think is captured in the language that's in our report. So if we could have just an overview of how we make that decision as a city, I think that would be wonderful.
Thank you, Member Agnew. I can answer that question. So we have a pedestrian crossing policy. So we apply the policy to ensure that we're consistent and that we're consistent with the application and treatment of those crossings throughout the city. So we're not haphazard on where they go. We want to consider installation where there's substantial conflicts with vehicles and pedestrians. That's what crosswalks are for. The factors that we look at the presence of regional trails. We look at school crossings and near schools and parks. We look at the number of pedestrians making that crossing. And then we look at really the kind of the roadway geometry, the sight lines, the stopping sight distance for vehicles, when they see a pedestrian, how quickly can they see it and react and stop. And then we look at the volume and the speed of those motorists when we start to look at the various different crossings. We have two types of crossings. We have an uncontrolled crossing or a controlled crossing. So controlled crossings are at stop signs or traffic signals, and uncontrolled are kind of those mid-block ones where you don't have any other traffic control, where people are going to cross with vehicles going in each direction. So we have different criteria for those two different scenarios. And then we have a flow chart. So we look at a flow chart, we look at volumes of traffic, we look at school crossings and parks. Is it a multi-use path? Where's the nearest other marking? Because we don't want them 100 feet next to each other. If there's already one just down the block a little ways, we would suggest they use that and we won't add another one. So we want to be consistent. Those are the criteria we use, but then we also don't want thousands of these around town because they cost about $2,000 to $3,000 per crossing with those thermoplastics on the initial installation. And then we got to replace those pavement markings every 5 to 7 years. So there's a maintenance side of this too, that we don't want them deteriorating and not be effective if we do install them. So those are the factors we look at.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you.
Would you care to move the matter, Member Agnew?
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Member Agnew, second by Member Jackson to adopt the traffic safety report of January 30, 2024. Any further discussion? All those in favor of adoption of the motion as stated say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Carried. Motion's adopted. All right, that completes the work in the consent portion of the agenda. We're going to move on now to special recognitions and presentations. I'm going to slide down the agenda a bit here. We're going to inject a introduction of our new finance director, and I'm going to have Manager Neal take care of that. And then we're going to go to the traffic safety summary report from Mr. Baller.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. I wanted to take just a moment tonight to introduce our new finance director. Her name is Pa Tao, and I'll ask Pa if she'll come up to the microphone and tell you a little bit about who she is and when she joined our team. Pa.
Hi, good evening. My name is Pa Tao. I was hired back in 2021 originally as the accounting and auditing coordinator. Since then, I've been promoted to the assistant finance director like 10 months later. And then here I am. I'm the finance director of the city of Edina. I've been in local government for over 10 years. I've worked for other city government. I worked as a consultant at a CPA firm for a number of years as well. And I want to share, I'm proud to say I'm the first person of color to be on the city's executive leadership team. So I'm super excited. Above all, I'm super thankful and happy that Scott Neal trusts me for this opportunity and impart this opportunity on me. And I'm excited to take on this new role and to continue serving the city of Edina.
Good. Member Jackson.
Well, welcome. We're
Thank you.
super excited to have you. Thank you. Can you tell us a little bit more about your consulting experience?
Yeah, so I worked for 4 years with Abdo Financial Solutions. They're actually just located across the street from City Hall. It's a CPA firm providing interim finance director services to small cities throughout the metro or throughout the state.
So you were doing financial director work on a temporary basis as they
Correct.
needed.
Yeah, for
help.
multiple cities.
Okay,
Yeah.
terrific. Wonderful.
Yeah.
Thank you. And we're so
Yeah.
excited to have you.
Thank you.
Other thoughts from council members? Seems odd to say welcome I'm sure you've been here for a while, but welcome to the new job, I guess, is what Member Jackson was saying, because it's been a pleasure having you here, and it's a serious vesting of responsibility here as finance director for the city. It's an important position, and we know you'll do good work for us. So thanks for being here, and thanks for being here this evening.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you.
All right, thank you. All right, now we'll move on to the annual presentation of the Traffic Safety Summary Report. Nick Baller, our Traffic Safety Coordinator, is here, and he will provide this information to the council. And I like you're either celebrating moving to daylight savings time, or you're just moving spring here quick, and I like that idea of the
Absolutely. Well,
a spring-like look. It encourages all of us on what's to come.
yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you, Mayor, members of council, for having me here tonight. Yeah, I figured we have this nice weather, might as well kind of start celebrating a little early. But yeah, I'm here tonight as part of an initiative started by the Transportation Commission starting in 2017, but moving my role into a full-time position in 2018, kind of due to the growing number of requests we've been receiving, and so I can be here on nights like tonight and providing an annual summary report, kind of show you just what we've received and what actions we have made throughout the calendar year. So getting into it, we will be going through requests both made and actions completed here in 2023, and we'll see some of these statistics and if we have some trends as well. A really quick summary of the traffic safety request process is a stakeholder can reach out to me, request or make their request. I can conduct a data collection, do some analysis. I provide this information to the Traffic Safety Committee. They review it, they offer a recommendation, and then that gets brought forth to that Transportation Commission. They're able to review, provide comments as well, and then it gets brought forth here to council to make any final action. Throughout this process, I am remaining in communication with these stakeholders and requesters so that they know where this is in the public process. When a request is received, it's broken down into one of these 5 categories. So starting here, we have parking and signage. This is typically what we receive the most of, especially following our street or neighborhood street reconstruction projects. That includes, no parking or allowing parking on streets. And then we have intersection control, so anything like a stop sign, yield sign, or even traffic signals are requested as well. And traffic calming is likely solely to slow vehicles down, not necessarily anything to control vehicles at intersections. Pedestrian safety are commonly crosswalks, a lot of concerns along sidewalks too, and anything that doesn't fall into those are classified as other. A lot of those are pavement marking requests, and we're receiving a lot of requests and concerns of vegetation blocking signs or impairing other stop controls at intersections. All right, so in 2023, we received 183 requests. And if you look at this pie chart on your left here, this is a little breakdown of the requests that were received. So pedestrian safety received the most at 28% of those requests, followed by intersection control. Then we have parking and signage, traffic calming at 13, and then all others at 11. Requests can be submitted by phone by contacting me, also by email. I do receive mail requests as well. And then we allow requests through our city website and the Edina 311 app. In 2023, we ended up reviewing 167 requests through the traffic safety process and ultimately here through council. Parking and signage led the way there with 29% of those requests reviewed. Pedestrian safety at 22% of those, intersection control at 20%. 15% were other, and the last 14% there were traffic calming. So also note that 51 of these requests that were reviewed in 2023 were received in years prior. I've mentioned this before, but a lot of these are due to requests made in fall or early winter months before the calendar year turns. And that's when eventually we need to conduct traffic studies to review those items. When items are reviewed by our Traffic Safety Committee, they provide an A, B, C, or D recommendation. So an A item is where staff recommends approval. We had 10 approved parking and signage requests. One example is updated parking restrictions on Market Street in the 50th and France district. We had 6 pedestrian safety approvals, and one includes we are going to be installing bollards as part of the Concord Neighborhood Street Reconstruction Project here in 2024, and this is going to be both at the north and south end of Wooddale Path, or in that path of Wooddale Avenue there. And then we did have 3 approvals of other items. Just one example there was on Valley View Road between Wooddale and Highway 62. We updated pavement markings there to allow buffered bike lanes. We had 42 B items where staff recommended no action, and there were 106 D items which were handled solely by myself, and a lot of those include requests for stop signs or crosswalks where volumes and data collected didn't come anywhere near what local or state policies kind of require. So because of that, they didn't really meet that kind of criteria to have discussion with staff. We look at our requests based on quadrant to make it a little easier here. In Northwest Edina, we received 46 requests, which was 11 fewer than in 2022. The highest amount of requests here were pedestrian safety issues, and you can kind of see a few of those were near that Countryside Elementary School, and a lot of those requests were kind of made in that area due to a closure along Tracy Avenue, so vehicles were trying to find their own detour, and that was causing little headaches here and there for a couple weeks. In Southwest Edina, we received 35 requests, which was almost double from the year before. Intersection control here was the highest request made. A lot of these are kind of beginning from Gleason Road off of just south of Highway 62, then extending towards Edina High School, down to Antrim and along almost all of West 70th Street to Highway 100. A lot of people are concerned of vehicles not stopping or wanting stop signs at those intersections. In Southeast Edina, we received 37 requests, which ended up being 6 more than in 2022. Intersection control led the way here, and a lot of these requests were mostly along county roads, so both York Avenue and France Avenue. There were kind of a few little clusters of requests made in that Southdale area, north of West 66th, and some of those we are going to be improving as part of our street reconstruction project coming up this year. In Northeast Edina, this is where we always receive our most requests. Here we received 65, which was just a few less than in 2022. Parking and signage again leads the way here. One of those reasons was because in the 50th and France district, that south parking ramp was closed for a couple months for some renovations. So we had a lot of concerns that were raised there for people parking on side streets or not parking properly on streets where we even do allow parking in some areas. And you can also see as well in the Morningside neighborhood, we received a good amount of requests just due to we had a street reconstruction project as well, and that led to some difficulties. We're able to look at all these requests kind of in a month-by-month fashion. The first thing that stands out to me here in this graph is August through October. This is where we received our highest amount of requests here. A lot of these were in that 50th and France area and also that Morningside neighborhood kind of following that reconstruction project. So people were just getting used to what was now in place, and here and there are still contractors around as well. There were 2 months that had the highest amount of requests for pedestrian safety requests, and those were January and February. I looked back, and a lot of those were due to sidewalks weren't plowed at the time, or crosswalk buttons weren't working properly, so we had to have those fixed. So those are kind of weather issues at those times. And kind of something a little unique this year compared to previous years is intersection control requests actually remained relatively consistent throughout the entire calendar year. Typically, we see a couple months here and there go much higher or much lower. When we just look at each request kind of made by category in the last handful of years, we can kind of see that trends are being made as we are looking for the last 5 years. There are a couple outliers here. You know, pedestrian safety had a huge increase compared to the last handful of years. But again, a lot of those ended up being because we had such a heavy winter in 2022 into 23. And ultimately, some requests are a little tougher to track based on how people submit them. You know, there are times where people can submit a pedestrian safety request when ultimately they're looking for police enforcement, but I feel unsafe as a pedestrian. So a lot of it can vary based on how they are submitted as well. I would just like to say thank you, and I'm open to any questions if anyone has any.
I think these annual visits that you provide for us in these reports are really helpful for us in understanding trends. And are you seeing things that we should be doing or changing in any of our plans? Director Milner was talking earlier about crosswalks in response to a question from Member Agnew. Are you seeing anything that we ought to be mindful of as a council and be contemplating?
That is a good question, Mayor Huffland. I would say, like, one thing that we are trying to work towards is being more proactive on some of these areas, you know, with street reconstruction projects coming up. But one thing that we are trying to work towards is trying to come up with a way to review where maybe crosswalks could go in as opposed to waiting for residents to request where they can go in as well. But that's just something that we're kind of in the works for at this time.
Okay, other questions for Mr. Balder? Yes, Councilmember Jackson.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have two questions. One's a short one. We have A, B, and D. What's a C response?
Oh, yeah, that's a great question. So I forgot to mention a C item is where staff is able to review the item and they don't have quite enough information to make a recommendation, but they want council to be aware that it has been discussed and there was information that was reviewed, and that eventually gets brought back to council as either an A, B, or a D item. Less frequently D item, but just more A or B to show that, yeah, it was discussed.
Okay, so like if you had to do a traffic report or a traffic study and it's wintertime.
Yeah, that could be an example, or maybe this neighborhood is under construction this summer. How about we'll study it again the following year? So.
Okay, terrific, thank you. And then when I'm trying to remember the year that we lowered the speed limit to 25. I believe that was my first year on council, 2021. Have we seen a response in traffic calming requests, or what kind of feedback we've been getting with the speed limit change?
Yeah, that's a good question. So we are conducting traffic studies in different types of roadways since we implemented the new speed limit. So we're kind of still at the beginning phase of what we're able to see for trends. Ultimately, a lot of what we have been seeing so far is neighborhood reconstruction projects have been improving that issue, but it's more, or there are more options that we have to work through before we're able to fully find information there.
Okay, terrific, thank you.
Member Risser.
In an ideal world, you'd be putting up signage and crosswalks everywhere you thought it was appropriate, not overdoing it. I get the whole concept of, not wanting to make people feel safe when it's not through that infrastructure, when it really is not accurate. But what kind of a budget would you need in order to, be able to do all of the projects that you wish you could be? Like, how much more would your budget have to be increased?
That's a great question. I'm unsure what any number that could be, because ultimately a lot of this depends on future development that's happening, whether that's apartment complexes, et cetera. So I hear we're going to start looking into a new crosswalk policy. I'm unsure where the progress is with that, but I wouldn't be able to have an answer for you tonight for that, yeah.
Fair question, but money does factor into whether or not a crosswalk goes up. Okay, thank you.
Well, Councilmember Risser, I think it's more tied to the bike and ped master plan, right? We usually build the sidewalks and then see where people want to cross at that point and then add them later. So when we looked, the ETC did look at the bike ped master plan. They want to implement it faster. We're kind of on a 20-year schedule right now. So that gives you a rough idea that we're trying to build that plan out in 20 years. We also have a grant, hopefully this year, if we can get all the agreements signed and done with the Department of one federal agency that would do our review all those plans. And it's called the Safe Streets for All plan, and we're going to develop that this year. So that might inform that question you just had with us this year.
Good to know, and I'm very familiar with Safe Streets for All.
Member Pierce.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Not trying to make more work for you, but I would just put a plug in. You guys spent some time with me kind of walking through the process in a little bit more detail in how you make decisions. And I actually thought it was pretty good. And so you talked about concepts of, to Member Risser's point, there might be lots of places where it looks like we should have a crosswalk, but when you think about the false sense of safety, placing a sign in a certain place or having a crosswalk in a place where it actually gives you the false sense of safety and causes more issues. And so I think you talked through some of those examples when we had our meeting earlier this year. And so just putting a plug in, especially for any residents that might want to kind of understand that, because I thought you did a really nice job of walking through that.
Thank you.
Good. All right. Thanks for being with us.
Thank you very much.
Yep. See you next spring.
Yeah, maybe I'll be dressed up hopefully nice and warm again too.
All right. And see if you can get one slide you had, try to get that deer to use the crosswalk, would you? He was close, but not on it.
Yeah, that's kind of the joke where, if you're using your 2 feet to walk, you do follow a crosswalk, but if you use your 4s, you don't. Yeah, so that's kind of why I include this in this.
There you go. A new category of humor, deer crosswalk humor. All right. Let's move on now to public hearings. That was the last item in the special recognitions and presentations portion of the agenda. We've got 2 public hearing matters this evening, one to act on this evening and one we'll take testimony on, and then the staff has asked us to postpone the decision on it until our next meeting. So let's take the first one, and our clerk has this one, Sharon Allison, our city clerk, and we have a request for a new on-sale intoxicating and Sunday sale liquor license for 4917 Eden LLC, DBA Starling. And I think all of us on the council know this is in the Maison Green building, kitty corner from City Hall. And we're going to give you a chance to come up in a minute here after we deal with this and tell us about Starling and how you're coming on the concept over by the old Public Works site. So, Clerk Allison, go ahead.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, Starling, a new restaurant, is opening in the Maison Green building on April 25th. That is just across the street from City Hall on the old Perkins restaurant site. The owner, Mr. Bren Frederick, applied for an on-sale intoxicating liquor license and a Sunday sale liquor license. After application review and a background investigation, I'm recommending approval, and is requesting approval tonight, which deviates from our usual public hearing process to hold the decision over to the next council meeting. Mr. Frederick is in attendance and would be happy to answer any questions you may have for him. At this time, I will answer any questions that you may have for me.
Any questions for Clerk Allison on the background check or anything she did in conjunction with this application? Mr. Frederick, you want to come forward and anything you want to say at this point in time? Otherwise, I'm going to open it. Maybe you should hold up and I'll open it up for public testimony first. This is a public hearing. But first, I'll check with my council colleagues to see if they had any questions for the clerk. All right, good. Let's open up this matter for public testimony. If you wish to testify regarding the potential issuance of a new on-sale intoxicating and Sunday sale liquor license to Starling, please come forward. All right, seeing no one coming forward, do we have anybody online that wishes to testify regarding this matter? Director Benarott?
I do not have anyone on the line, but I think we should wait just a little bit longer since
Okay.
there is a delay in the broadcast. My clock shows that it's still 7:59. I'll come back to you at 8 o'clock or when I have a caller, whichever is first.
Thank you.
It's kind of like watching water boil. I do not have any callers, so I
All
think
right,
it's safe for you
thanks.
to move forward.
Is there a motion to close the public hearing in this matter?
So moved.
For a second?
Second.
Motion by Member Jackson, second by Member Pierce to close the public hearing with regard to the potential issuance of a new on-sale intoxicating a Sunday sale liquor license for 4917 Eden LLC DBA Starling. Any further discussion? All those in favor of closing the public hearing on this matter say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Is there a motion to issue the new on-sale intoxicating a Sunday sale liquor license to 4917 Eden LLC DBA Starling for their new operation?
So moved.
Jackson
Second.
moves, Member Pierce seconds the issuance of the new on-sale intoxicating and Sunday sale liquor license to 4917 Eden LLC DBA Starling. Any further discussion? All those in favor of adoption of the motion as stated say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Motion's approved, and the new on-sale intoxicating liquor license is authorized for issuance. Mr. Frederick, come on up and tell us what, I was in the building a couple weeks ago and touring it and stuck my head through the door connecting Maison Green to Starling, and it looked like there was quite a bit yet to do. But it sounds like you're moving along very, very well, and excited to have you over there and then also over on the old Public Works site. So maybe you can bring us up to give yourself a plug on Starling and tell us what's going on at this.
Well, thank you for having me tonight, council members and mayor. I think to a lot of people, when you see a restaurant like about 30 days before it opens, everyone says there's no way it's going to happen. And we're literally going to be ready in like 30 days. So it's coming fast. It's just finished work now. Sharon, thank you so much for helping out with everything that you've done and allowing us to kind of be ready to train the first part of April. We'll probably have kind of soft opening, mock services for friends, family, community members, city council members, city staff, if you'd like. The fact that it's so close, I mean, we definitely want to get you guys over to check it out. So we'll be opening up probably end of April and early May. So it's going to happen really fast.
And the theme of the restaurant and the menu?
Yeah, it's very much an eatery. You know, it's culinary focused. It is globally inspired eatery. So we're going to have dishes from all over the world. It's inspired by global flavors. So we have things from Southeast Asia to Moroccan and African spices. We have European flavors, South American, name it. But we're doing it in an approachable way. So we'll have tacos on the menu, but it could be a butter chicken, like Indian style taco, or a steak, but it's chimichurri and more South American flavors, or Balinese fried rice. So we're going to just have a lot of fun with the menu. And I think there's going to be tons of flavors for everyone to enjoy. There'll still be a burger and fries and oysters, but just, it's going to be all over the place. But that's the point.
That sounds exciting.
Yeah.
And then what about over at the old Public Works site? How is that project coming along?
Yeah, where's Bill Neuendorf when you need him, I guess? I'm not sure. You guys probably know more than I do. Bill has been very good about keeping us up to date, but as far as I know, we're in a holding pattern, and I believe there's a new developer being looked at, being searched for. So that's what I know of, but we're still a go. But I think the developer piece on the condominiums or the apartments needs to be figured out. So,
okay, very good. Thanks for being with us.
And is there any questions?
We look
on the
forward to
restaurant at
getting
all?
over there and supporting you.
Okay, gotcha. Thank you guys very
Thanks,
much.
Mr. Frederick. Good to see you. All right, we got that liquor license issued, and now the next matter is potentially amending the capital improvement plan to authorize increase in bonding for the Community Health and Safety Center for Fire Station Number 2. And we've got our Finance Director, Patau, is with us this evening, and Nick Anhut, our Municipal Advisor from Ellers, and our Fire Chief is here as well, just in case he needs to come up and explain anything to us that's important from his perspective. So,
Sorry. All right. So just a little debrief. In June of 2022, the council approved and authorized financing up to $39 million in general obligation bonds for the land acquisition, design, and construction of the Fire Station 2. The original plan authorized a not to exceed $39 million bonding amount. As of December 2023, final bid results were received, and council subsequently approved increasing the project budget by $8.3 million from $39 million to $47.3 million. So here with us tonight, like Mayor said, we have our municipal advisor from Ellers, Nick Anhut, who will present on this item. So thank you, Nick.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor,
yes.
council members.
Welcome, Mr. Anhut.
So the action tonight is to hold a public hearing and then hold over that hearing for consideration of a resolution to move ahead with authorizing bonds for the remaining amount to round out the financing of the fire station. Just as a quick reminder, the authority to issue debt for any municipality in the state is governed by state statutes, which does allow for the issuance, but it is subject to approval at a referendum unless there is a specific statute that offers an exception. And this would be for any kind of debt, including the ability for a city to apply a general obligation pledge or its full faith and credit backing behind the repayment of that debt. That general obligation pledge of the city of Edina does carry a AAA bond rating, which does allow for the greatest access to external capital and the lowest potential cost financing that's available to municipalities. One of the exceptions in the statute, specifically for projects like the fire station as well as other municipal facilities listed on the screen, is what are called capital improvement plan bonds. These are bonds that are authorized for these projects after holding a public hearing, adopting a specific capital improvement plan that identifies those specific needs, and then also opening up to the public for a 30-day reverse referendum or petition process that allows for the public to come forward, potentially with a valid petition, to put the question to the voters to decide whether or not the city should have the bonding authority for that specific need. Those petitions do need to be signed by at least 5%, or the equivalent of 5% of the last turnout in the last general election in order to be valid. So as Pa mentioned, the project was initially, or has been designed over the course of many years. The City Council held a public hearing and petition process to authorize up to $39 million for this project back in 2022. There was no petition filed. The council moved ahead and authorized the acquisition of the site, issued $17 million of that amount to acquire the site and provide for the preliminary design of the facilities, and now we're in the process of thinking about funding the remaining portion of the construction of the project, which will be underway, is currently underway this year and expected to be completed next year. But that amount was only $39 million, which does require that we would need an additional amount in order to round out the full cost of the project. And so we're here tonight to go through the process to potentially authorize the council to make a decision about issuing up to $8.3 million in additional bonds to round out funding of the project. Back in 2022, we did put together some estimates of the potential levy implications for this project. It was anticipated that starting in 2025, there would need to be a dedicated levy set aside to make the repayment on the potential bond issuance. That amount that was programmed was $2.3 million. With this increase in the potential project. Our updated estimates anticipate $2.8 million will be necessary on an annual basis to provide for the repayment of those bonds. And this $2.8 million by itself represents about a 5% overall levy increase from 2014 levies. So that would be the potential impact from a budgetary standpoint. Now, that amount is not finalized. It would not actually be incurred until the council actually goes through the process of issuing and pricing the debt, finding the most favorable outcome, as well as then adopting those levies within your annual or biannual budgeting process. One of the other potential impacts or ramifications of this decision, certainly anytime there is an issuance of debt, we keep in mind the city's AAA credit rating and any implications on that. As part of the ongoing process, every time the city issues bonds, we do update the credit rating agencies, Standard & Poor's and Moody's, with future debt plans of the community. So we already have identified that $39 million and have had conversations at least 2 times in the last 2 years with both of those agencies about this project. They know it's coming, and they have included that expectation within their analysis for the original $39 million. As a result of that, their evaluations remained unchanged. So they certainly do recognize that an increased debt load has a potential detrimental impact overall in terms of a rating. So if you issue $1 of debt, it's worse than when you started. But when they look at the overall perspective of the city of Edina, the health of your fund balances and the local economy, it was of no concern and no direct impacts in the overall rating. S&P did revise their debt score, one component of their evaluation, to lower that rating to adequate, but it did not see the need or expectation to change its AAA overall rating of the community. And there was no material change within Moody's analysis. This would be an additional $8 million that they don't potentially know about yet, but we will have those conversations. I do not anticipate that that on itself would cause any direct implication to the city's credit rating. So tonight, we're asking the council to open a public hearing to allow for public testimony. I will also stand by for any questions, but in terms of the practice of the council, you'll continue that hearing and then take up the actual resolution to move ahead with the petition process at your next meeting on March 19th. There will be a resolution prepared for consideration at that meeting to allow for the increase of up to $8.3 million in additional general obligation CIP bonds to fund the fire station project and start that reverse referendum process. That window will remain open for 30 days after that point in time, expecting to expire on April 18th. And then at that point, should there be no petition, then the authority to consider the bonds will rest with the council. We do plan on working with staff and understanding the construction schedule that is underway. We do anticipate that at least some amount of that bond issuance will be necessary this year and plan to have those discussions to move ahead with the bonding in May, potentially June of this year, alongside some of the other capital financing needs for street and utility projects that are also being considered. So with that, I'll stand by for any questions of the council right now and obviously the public hearing as well.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Randhut. Let's check with council members to see if anybody has a question for you or a comment. Go to Council Member Jackson.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. So, Mr. Randhut, how are other cities who are issuing bonds and doing capital projects, are we seeing this across the metro area where the costs are going up? How common is this type of adjustment?
We have seen over the course of the last 2 to 3 years significant escalation, both in terms of, at first it was happening on the procurement side for materials. That has continued, but then the most recent increases have been related to labor as well, which is a significant component of any type of project like this. So we have seen double-digit increases in terms of a percent on many capital projects across the board. There have been some certain projects that have started to peter off and slow down as far as those escalations, and we hope that continues. But obviously, it is happening. Not just for municipalities, it's happening across the sector in real estate development as well.
Terrific, thank you.
Other questions for Mr. Randhut? All right, let's open this matter up for public testimony. And then I think pursuant to the recommendation of staff, we're going to continue the action to the March 19 City Council meeting so people would be able to participate by submitting written or telephonic messages by March 10. So let's open it up for any public testimony. Is there anyone in the audience who wishes to testify regarding this matter? Hearing nothing and seeing no one coming forward, I'll turn now to Director Benarott.
My lines are still very lonely tonight. Again, I do think we should wait to give people an opportunity to call in. My clock shows that it's 8:15, so I'll come back to you at 8:16 or when I have a caller, whichever is first.
Thank you.
It is now 8:16 and I still don't have a caller, so I think it's safe for you to move forward.
Okay. In that interim period, did any council member have a question for Mr. Anhut or staff? All right, we've got a recommendation from staff to have the council pass a motion to close the public hearing in this matter on March 10 and continue the action to the March 19 City Council meeting. Is there a motion to that effect?
So moved.
Second.
Member Pierce moves, Member Jackson seconds the motion to close the public hearing on March 10 and continue the action to March 19, the March 19 City Council meeting. This is with regard to Resolution 2024-21, which would potentially amend the capital improvement plan to authorize an increase in bonding for the Community Health and Safety Center fire, what we know as Fire Station Number 2. Any further discussion regarding the motion as stated? All those in favor of adoption of the motion as stated, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Motion's approved. The hearing in this matter will stay open until March 10. You can submit things to City Hall. Any comments that you wish to make? And then we'll continue the action to the next City Council meeting on March 19. All right, that completes the public hearing portion of the agenda. And now we'll turn to the reports and recommendations portion of the agenda. We have one matter in this portion of the agenda this evening, and we have, and that is to approve the proposed 2024 through 2026 employment agreement with the city manager, Scott Neal. And Manager Neal, you are going to introduce the matter, and then we're going to turn back to me and also to Member Pierce to talk about the work we did in working on this this contract extension.
Thank
Manager
you,
Neal.
Thank you, Your Honor, members of council. I started working as a city manager on June 1st, 1988, a long time ago. I've been working continuously in that field in 5 different cities. Edina is my 5th city. I started working here in November 8th of 2010. Council is included under the performance review, included in the performance contract that I have had with this city since I arrived. The structure has stayed the same. Some terms have changed from time to time, but it's been materially the same agreement from when I started. The council is obliged to do an annual performance review. You did that annual performance review in 2023. We did not do one in 2022, but we did one in 2023. It was facilitated by Dr. Craig Waldron. He did most of the work in December of 23, and he did the closed session discussion with the council on January 16th, 24. At that same council meeting, at that same date and the council meeting after the work session, the council consented to the mayor and council member Pierce to form a subcommittee to meet with me about the agreement and about my compensation. And that brings us to today. The agreement that is in the packet tonight has been discussed by Councilmember Pierce and myself and the mayor. We reached an agreement on terms, and they recommend the agreement, and I do too.
All right. And you're comfortable with the proposed terms and conditions as well?
Yes, I am.
All right, so let me just back up a little bit, and I'll provide a little supplemental information, as will Member Pierce. So I think most folks know that our form of governance is Minnesota Plan B, which means that we have a city manager that runs the day-to-day operations of the city, and the only person that the city council can hire and fire is the city manager. And when we think about the scope of responsibilities of the city manager, at least in Edina, it's extensive. And you run an operation that has about $185 million budget now between the city itself and all of our enterprises. We've now got approximately 300 full-time equivalents for employees, and from time to time during the year, you've got another 500 that you're ultimately responsible for. And so over the years, we've been extending these contracts in 3-year increments and setting the compensation over those 3-year periods, but it's been based off of what the governor was paid. And this was what we call the salary cap. And the salary cap issue was something that affected cities for years and years. We were concerned about it because we wanted to make sure that we were competitive in the pay that we were providing to our CEO, our Chief Operating Officer, our COO. And I think other cities, as we're involved in this 19-city consortium of Municipal Legislative Commission, from being involved in that over the years and chairing it for the past few years, it's been an ongoing concern for those cities as well when we compare ourselves to cities in other nearby geographic locations in Wisconsin or down in Illinois. So the cap got lifted during the 2023 legislative session, and then we had to figure out what that really meant in terms of flexibility. As you mentioned, we've had several meetings with you. Member Pierce and I have done our own meeting and evaluation. Dr. Waldron, as you mentioned, did his work. And I would just note again, and I think we talked about this on January 16th when we reported out on that closed session, that his methodology of doing his work is what he would characterize as being qualitative in nature, using an interview technique. And each salient point that he raises in his report, which is almost 30 pages, needs to be evaluated, and evaluated in the context of what we did this time was he interviewed all of your department heads and then interviewed all the council members. In the past, we've been involved with going deeper into the employment base and have interviewed employees or had whoever did the work interview employees as well. But several years ago, the council thought, well, we could streamline this a little bit by just having that concentration on department heads. And so that's what Mr. Waldron did. We've also in the past used, I think it was a system that we got from the League of Minnesota Cities, where it was a scoring system in different categories, and we've done that as well. So it's something that we've changed our approach on from time to time. We've changed consultants from time to time. And when I asked Mr. Waldron today about his report, and I'm looking at the reports or the quotes and comments from the department managers. There's probably 60, 70 comments in there spread over about I think 7 pages in the report. Again, I would say high marks on from the staff on your general leadership capabilities, your ethics, your character. Some folks in there had some concerns, but to me, at least, they were more isolated in nature, and the overwhelming sort of report out from staff people, and as I say, he told me that these comments that he had in there, these quotes, were pretty much verbatim from the staff. You know, where it's most important to have support is at the staff level, and you've got it. Your department directors completely believe in and support your judgment and the leadership that you have provided. When we got to thinking about the salary, and Member Pierce is going to talk about some of the performance-related issues, because every year you set performance goals, and we're mindful of those. We were, as I mentioned earlier, we were concerned about the impact of the lifting of the salary cap. But what we found in checking with other cities was that they were probably in that 2 to 4% range, which was lower than what the consultant was recommending. And then you actually made it easier for us in a way, because I think we were kind of trending towards treating you like we treated our other employees with respect to raises in that 3 to 4% range. And when we came up with this notion with you of treating you like others and adjusting the scale for compensation, what we did was we moved you up. I think it was 3.25%, or that's our recommendation to the council for a vote. So your current salary is $213,136, and this would move you to $219,530, and then you'd be on an increment and step basis, just like the rest of the employees that are management or otherwise. I think this also helps us address potentially some of what we would call compression issues that, as we compete for key employees or fight to keep key employees from going other places, having you on this process, part of this step process, will be important to give you a little bit more latitude in maintaining the quality of the employee that we have here at the city. So I think those are just some of the things I wanted to raise. We're suggesting, again, a 3-year contract. I did send out we worked on this, and I took on the responsibility of doing a red line version so folks could see what the potential changes were. Really nothing much has changed. I did some reordering and some language cleanups. The salary, of course, is going to be different, and then you're going to be on this grade and step system. And then we did adjust away from per diem, or excuse me, a mileage-based reimbursement for your vehicle, and went to a recommendation on $400 a month. And then, as I said, I reordered some of these other things and tried to clean up some of the language that was in there. Other than that, I think, the dues and subscriptions and benefits and things you can do for yourself, they're pretty much consistent with what we've done over the years since you've been employed, since November 8 of 2010. And the reason that November 8 date is used in here is because that's your anniversary date for your employment. So for 2023, you'd be on that step, and then November 8, 2023, you'd shift up to that grade and step. And I think that's about it in terms of the substance of the contract itself and the kind of the key terms and conditions. And of course, one of the other important things to consider was whether you're meeting the performance obligations that you set for yourself. And I think Member Pierce is going to address some of those.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Before I jump into that, I'll just reiterate a couple of changes that we've made in the contract, and you kind of have to read through it to get the grasp of it. And so the one thing that the mayor talked about within the contract, I'm going to use the word we've standardized on the salary and performance review process for this role, for the city manager. And so now it's going to follow the same process as every other role. And why I think that is significant, the mayor talked about the grouping of the role and the step change, so following that process. But then I also think that it makes the performance review more formal because it's the same process that every other role in the organization goes through. And so those changes, I think, are I think really important and significant that we highlight that we're making that change. And so then within a performance review, there are a couple of areas that I think we principally focus on. One being those core performance results. We talked about those. You have those listed. And then the second would be interpersonal or process type initiatives. And so what I wanted to do is just to go through in kind of a summary format of those two things. And so from a performance results, I just picked 6 of these to talk about, but there's a list in there. And if anyone is interested in the full list, we can provide that, I would assume. And so the first one I have is leading the city's effort to achieve its state legislative policies and positions in 2023. I just picked 3. One was advancing the fire station to. The second I just picked was a South Metro Public Safety Training Facility. And the third was getting funding for to replace the Roslyn Park pedestrian bridge. This second one I have is getting the referendum approved. So there's a lot of work that went into framing the narrative around that. And then meeting throughout the city so that people understood what those funds were going to be used for. I attended some of those meetings. And that one's tricky. Every time you're asking to spend more money, it's tricky. But that passed with a margin of victory of 66% to 33%. And so to me, that says that the city staff did a great job under your leadership in helping everybody understand what's complicated within there and what the benefits were. And you spent time with each of us to help us understand what the narratives were as well. The next one I selected, which is near and dear to us, is the Quality of Life Survey. Overall quality of life in 2021 was 96%, 2023 was 93%. And so that's a really good rating for quality of life on a survey that is statistically sound. It's randomized. It goes to the necessary numbers of homes. And it's a statistically sound process that we have been following and we continue to follow. On the same survey, the overall quality of city services in 2021 was 87, so we maintained that percentage in 2023. And then the other one that I pulled off of there was, are we going in the right direction as a city? And so in 2021, the right direction rating was 68%. In 2023, we maintained the same rating at 68%. Again, I think that is significant achievement as well, and it encompasses a lot of activities that are going on within the city and with your leadership. The next one I picked was the regional library redevelopment project. Lots of us are excited about seeing that project continue to move forward, but we do have a comprehensive letter of interest, an LOI in place for that. The next one I chose was the various budget increases that are focused on public safety and health services. And so again, listening to the residents' various needs, and then trying to figure out how we can improve public safety, whether that be additional police officers or adding a mental health specialists, and again, pushing forward with the planning for Fire Station 2. And the last one, we have had quite a bit of turnover challenges this year. And I think in certain areas we were able to address those. And in some instances, we may have used contractors, right, to get the bodies we need. But in that volatility, we were able to maintain service delivery. So I just selected those. There are others on there, and if folks are interested, I'm sure we can share that list. And so those are the summary of the core leadership results. The second section would be interpersonal and process improvements. And so in the closed session that was referenced earlier, as a council, we reviewed the report, the Waldron report, and there were a number of areas where we thought we needed improvement. And so I'm going to go through that list as well. And so the first one, from a budget standpoint, needing to ensure that we work with staff to come up with a more effective way to articulate the value received for tax revenue. And so you and I have talked about that. And so finding a way so that when we get to this point again, and there's that increase in the tax levy, that we are able to really articulate the value in a way that's easily consumed by the residents. The second one, continuing to address the remaining staffing vacancies that are due to turnover. I think we talked a lot about the executive manager and the director level, but there's other turnover within the city, and we actually talked about an issue in terms of workload management. And so I think that being able to continue to address those issues is important. The next one, we need to better understand staff employee engagement. As Mayor mentioned, council really only hires one person, which is the city manager, but we are accountable for ensuring that we are doing everything that we can to ensure that we can have the right levels of services that the residents expect and deserve. And so helping us understand the staff employee engagement and what we might be able to do as a council to help address those issues. This next one, we've talked about this one kind of in spot instances, depending on what projects are before us. And so this one is that we need to increase the precision in how we define, quantify, and measure success, especially when we're dealing with programs that are intrinsically more subjective in nature or new to the city. And so you can think of the bag ordinance. Sustainability is really an easy one that you can understand. We have to figure out how we can quantify these in an objective way because they are going to increase spending. And so that is the fourth one. And then finally, you will need to review and refine approaches that you and the staff take when addressing contentious or very complex issues that are raised by the community and others. I think that is a tough one that we all kind of deal with, but we continue to kind of get feedback that we need to improve in that area. And so my screen almost went out. We definitely want to make sure that we have those initiatives as well on your list of improvements. And then with that, I will turn to my colleagues to see if they have anything that they would like to add. This is intended to be kind of a summary of some of the things that we mentioned in the work session.
Before we go there, I wanted to cover I noticed one thing I forgot to cover, and then a comment on another thing. The term and termination section of the agreement is consistent with what we've done for several different agreements, but it doesn't mean you've been, we're suggesting you be employed for 3 years. The purpose of the term is to set the compensation over that 3-year period of time. So nothing would preclude you from terminating your employment anytime you wanted, and the same as the reverse is also true. And there are consequences to termination, whether it's for cause or not for cause, but it doesn't mean that you've got a surefire contract for 3 years that you know you're going to be working here for 3 years, and who knows, maybe you want to do something else at some point in time. So that was one issue. And then just quickly on that compensation level, I forgot to mention we'd also looked at this city manager compensation study, this final report from November 2023, which had, we looked at, I think there were 30 communities, I guess, Missouri, Michigan, Colorado, Minnesota, Kansas, Illinois, and the average city manager salary was $215,920, and then the max was $308,660. And so, and Waldron was recommending a little bit more, as I mentioned earlier, than what you and Member Pierce and I agreed on at a 3.25% increase to $219,530 on the next step and grade situation with respect to the proposed contract. So having provided that supplemental information, I'll now turn to our colleagues and see if they have any comments or questions from the work that we did on behalf of the council. Member Jackson.
Thank you. So first, I'd like to thank everybody for working on this contract. As I read it, it's a very elegant contract, and the improvements and changes you made, I think, are very professional, and I like the steps and lanes and steps. Is that what it's called? Yeah. Approach. It's a really good thing. And I want to talk a little bit about the impact of the salary cap that has been going on. This is a contract for the city manager, but being able to raise his salary means that then going down the line to the other departments, there's been compression. And one of the strange things that happens is if an employee moves from an hourly position to a salaried position in some departments, they actually have to take a pay cut, and because of the compression and because it can't go any higher than the city manager's contract. So I'm really excited that we're going to be able to have some flexibility and be able to raise the salaries for our senior staff so that we can recruit and keep people. And so it's going to unravel some of the knots that have happened because of that artificial cap. So that's really good. The other thing I was going to save this for later in the story, later in the thing, but I've got a story. We had an event, a recognition event for the Crime Prevention Fund on Saturday last week. And the way it was set up was the chiefs presented the awards, and we had an award for Danny Metzold, but then the chiefs then in turn asked their department heads to give the different awards. So lots of people, Sergeant Benny got to, or Lieutenant Benny, sorry, gave the first one, but then down the line, different people presented, and the leadership training that provided. So the chiefs put the event together, how they did it, and it was done beautifully. One of the best awards events I've ever been to, actually. And then all the different opportunities for people to have public speaking and recognition, both giving recognition and receiving recognition. And that's because of Scott's leadership style. And I just want to emphasize how important the amount of energy that Scott puts into talent development is really important, and I wanted to acknowledge that this evening because I'm very grateful for it. And those are my comments.
Thank you, Member Urser.
First, I want to thank the mayor and Member Pierce for everything that they did to bring this to the table. I'd also like to acknowledge Manager Neal for his work. this is the first time that I've gone through a review process, okay? And so everything was new to me. And given the fact that we have worked with the same reviewer for several years, and we missed the review in 2022, I do have some concerns about the process. And while the Waldron method did garner 60 to 70 statements roughly for what would have been 11 employees, for me, the amount of the granular information that came through was really very limited. And I remember looking at the report and wondering, where's all the stuff that I talked to Waldron with or about? And I didn't see that there for me. I mean, I saw a subject touched on very lightly, but not gone into depth. And then there was another area that I raised that was not really there at all. So I think there's some real strong points to his method, but it does make me concerned that there's this filtering that kind of happens. And I would like to see us move forward with a process where everybody who is part of the feedback team or the, providing information, because we are, as noted, a strong city manager, weak council form of government. And so these annual reviews are so important, and it's really critical that people who participate are able to, if they feel like it, maybe somebody doesn't want to put in a written statement, but I think it would be really very helpful for council to be able to see actual, primary source material. I'm sorry, the little nerd, instead of secondary, that you don't really know. So, although I know he takes it very seriously and all of that, but I think anytime there is somebody who is presenting what somebody else said, there's room for misunderstanding, or there's room for maybe not seeing something. And so that makes me nervous. And I just want to, I hope all the department heads out there, if it doesn't appear that we're responding to something, it's, who knows? So there's that. The other thing is the limited scope, and I really appreciate that in the past we interviewed the department heads, but we also interviewed people who were middle management, people who were, on the front lines of serving the Edina community and all of that. And I think it's important that for future reviews that those voices are heard. So, and I know I've said this in the past, but being somebody who is really concerned about process, this left me wondering, how do we set the goals for the next year? And so that was a problem for me. And I am not really sure exactly how we're going to set the goals for next year, and if maybe there could be a brief statement about that, and I will hope that would involve all the council members.
Good. Yeah, thanks, Member Risser. Member Agnew.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, fellow council members. Member Risser, I can really kind of agree with some of the things that you said of being new to this process within the city council. Kind of in my day job, I've been through the review cycle quite often, but it is different knowing that there are 5 of us who are kind of collecting our input and information. And so also just really want to thank Member Pierce for, I think, really summarizing and providing a lot of that insight, because in the document that we received, it was very long, and we're not sharing out that entire document. And so I think that your summary of it was really, really accurate. I'm supportive of this contract. I think that the changes that we're making are really good. And I think, to build off what you said, Member Pierce, this is also going to enable us to refine the annual review process and make sure that there is a little bit more of that structure to it. And I think that, Member Risser, that's where you and I can help influence that as well, to make sure that we understand it, we're influencing what are the goals, and together as a council making sure that that's clear. But I'm really happy with the adjustments that have been made, and I'm thankful to your leadership in pulling that together.
Thanks for that. Anything supplemental?
I guess. Thanks for that, Member Agnew. I do, what I have experienced with Scott is in the times that I have suggested we do different things, he's been open to that. And so I'm gonna take a little leap of faith that you guys will remember this. We actually talked about, Member Risser, one of your concerns and of the Waldron report. And so within there, we do get feedback from department heads. And so kind of earlier in the meeting, there's another quote that's a leadership, from a different leadership book that says, seek first to understand. And so I haven't actually gone through this process before. So this was my first time going through it as well. And so I've learned that the city did do a 360 process at one point. And a different council moved away from that for whatever reason. And I say whatever reason because the material thing is we get to decide as this council what process we want to use in that regard. And so we can actually do that. We can have the conversation like you mentioned, Member Risser. And then the second piece that we talked about, the last reviews, all the reviews that I've been a part of, Waldron has done those. And so we talked about, well, if you want to have more of a independent review, maybe the same person shouldn't do it in consecutive years, right? Maybe there could be 3 different organizations or consultants we use, and we do a round robin kind of a thing. And so when that suggestion or question was asked, Scott, yeah, sure, we could do that. And so I think that we're at a point where we can infuse a little bit more structure into it. But I think the key point is we do, as a council, have discretion, and we have to give direction to what we want to see there. And so I appreciate the comments that Member Agnew made, and I thought I would just make those 2 additions to my comments.
Just one other thing, and I know there's different ways of doing reviews, and for some of them, they are sort of based on anonymity, and I feel like there was a little bit of confusion with this one, because I was asked directly whether I asked a question, and so I thought that sort of undercut, and I don't know if it really was supposed to be anonymous, but maybe. So, kind of structuring that into the next round too would be really helpful.
Thank you. I think that that's one of those things that's really hard to capture the exact nature of all feedback without that summarizational narrative and be completely anonymous. And so I think that's where we as a city council, and maybe this goes along with using a different consultant or doing a round robin, we can structure it the way that we want to. And so I think we just need to be explicit of what are the expectations. Is it anonymous? Is it not anonymous? Because I do think that it's a fair ask to have a clear expectation for that as a council.
I think that's another benefit of having a closed session on it as well, because then it's us talking about it. We know we have the information, and it's helpful to all of us, but it's more private in nature in some respects. So
I had one other. Just I'm not quite sure how to ask this, but I did want I drafted the notes that I read from. And so to Member Risser's point earlier about the minutes, I wanted to enter these into the record. And can I, because I have this list of improvement items, And so I just think it would be beneficial for you to
Certainly.
to have that. So I can just put that in a Word doc and send it. Yeah.
Clerk Allison?
To be clear, though, we are going to meet behind closed doors to set goals for this coming year, or is that not happening?
Manager Neal?
A couple of things. First, regarding who does who and how the review happens. During my 13 years here, we've used 3 different reviewers. So changing review, another new review is okay. That's okay. We can do that. If you recall, part of our process kicks off with a self-evaluation that came to you in December. In that self-evaluation, I give you a status report on goals from the previous year, and then I give you my proposed goals for the upcoming year. So I have given you what I think my goals should be for 2024. The council hasn't acted on that. You don't necessarily have to act on it, but you could. But that exists out there already for you to see, both from a professional side and a personal side.
And just for the record, that's the document I used for what I drafted as well. So.
And the last thing I'll say just about Dr. Waldron's process is that I can tell you from him to me, there was never a disclosure about who made what comment, whether it was staff or council members. It was completely anonymous from that perspective.
Mercer?
I think it would be important for us to meet and review the goals as a council. I mean, one of my concerns is project vetting and making sure that everything that comes before council, we're getting a clear understanding of the potential risks, the scope. I mean, we now have a DOJ investigation for the Grandview Bridge. And so expectations need to be also inclusive of, you know, making sure we're doing process in a way that doesn't put the city of Edina at risk in any way. And I think sometimes we've had, you know, we need to know when staff is coming forward with recommendations to approve a project. You know, I try to do additional work, but, you know, we should know more about it so that we're not necessarily voting on something and we're not fully informed.
Manager Neal, maybe you could recirculate your 2024 goals, and then to the extent we wanted to add to them, I hear you saying inferentially that we can do that.
Certainly.
We can have a common agreement on what your goals are going to be, I guess.
And reshape them?
Yeah, reshape them.
Yeah.
So.
And I'd be happy to do that in a closed session
We
with
should do that soon, since
council.
we're only a third of the way into the year, roughly. Okay, good conversation, everybody. Is there, having had that good conversation, is there a motion to approve the proposed 2024 through 2026 employment agreement with City Manager Scott H. Neal, as described and shown in the employment agreement that's been circulated to all council members?
So moved.
Second.
Member Agnew moves, Member Jackson seconds the approval of the 2024-2026 employment agreement with the city, between the City of Edina and City Manager Scott Neal, as embodied in the employment agreement that was provided to council. Any further discussion? All those in favor of adoption of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstention? Anything? No, we got a unanimous vote. Okay, good. All right. Here we are. Yes, go ahead, Manager Neal.
If I may, Mayor Hovland, members of the council, I just want to thank you for your support of the new agreement. It means a lot to me and to my family to have kind of peace of mind and to have some security. So we think that's important, and I think that's important. It provides some stability to our organization and to our employees and to our neighbors as well. I look forward to partnering with the council to develop your collective goals and vision for the future of the city. And I promise you that I'm going to do the best job I can with the generous public resources that you entrust me with to accomplish those goals. So thank you.
Thank you, Major Neal, and we'll shift right into your comments, other comments you might have.
Two comments. Excuse me, one serious, one less so. First is a serious one. We have had some discussion about how the enforcement tools that the city uses for enforcing our tree ordinance. One of the root fundamentals of our tree ordinance is that we want to make it, or we design this tree ordinance to make it expensive to take down a tree. And that was really one of the key strategies to preserving trees, is to make it, to give a lot of disincentive to cutting down trees. And we do that with cost, and we do that with money. The tool that we were using to do that, for the most part, was cash escrow. And I don't want to get into the formulas about how the cash escrow is calculated and how it's held, et cetera. But we have in the ordinance the option to also use a letter of credit. Staff always prefer the cash escrow because we hold the cash escrow, and if there's a compliance issue, we have the money and we can make the compliance happen very easily. With a letter of credit, it's not as easy. We have to go to whoever is holding the letter of credit, a bank or an insurance carrier or some other institution, and we have to ask them for money. Oftentimes their response will be, well, can you give them more time? Can you give them another chance? Are you sure it's the right guy? Why are we doing this in the first place? There's some hassle factor that goes on in that setting. Nonetheless, I think there is some interest from the council on being more permissive in that regard. And so starting April 1st, we are going to start accepting letters of credit for tree ordinance enforcement issues. And we'll test it. We'll see how well this works compared to the current cash escrow system that we have and the LOCs that we have, because we do in other parts of our organizations use a lot of letters of credit to ensure compliance, particularly in planning and engineering functions. So we will try to use that here. We'll give you a report in May when we come back and talk. We'll just have a month under the new piece at that time, so there might not be too much to report about there. But we'll start talking about that and informing people in the arbor business and even developers to let them know that. And I talked with affected staff about it yesterday and again this morning. We need to do a little bit of setup on our end, but we will get moving with that, and we'll start that on April 1st.
What about the people who already have cash deposits?
That's one of the things we got to figure out how to resolve. That's not as easy as just saying we're going to start doing something, but we are going to figure that out here in the next few weeks too.
I'd like to see a replacement strategy there with line of credit too. Anybody else? Member Risser?
I know our tree policy is based on that of Minnetonka, and it is considered to be stronger because we do have much more of a required financial commitment than the city of Minnetonka. However, I know the city of Minnetonka has really found success with their tree ordinance, and I believe they cap the amount per tree at like 2,000 or something like that. And I'm really thinking it would be very helpful to know just how much, on a quantitative basis, how much more effective our much more expensive, if you will, tree policy is compared to Minnetonka. Because if we don't necessarily have to go so high, that's an important thing to look at as well. Thank you.
You had one other item, I think.
Oh, it's St. Patrick's Day next week. The parade, March 17th falls on a Sunday, so that means the parade is on a Saturday in St. Paul. Aaron, go Bra.
Oh, well, watch for the photos. I wouldn't count on that.
That's all I have tonight. Thank you.
Director Bennerat, were you placing something over there for one of the? Okay. All right. I don't remember where we started last time. Member Agnew, do you have anything?
Not tonight.
Okay.
Thank you.
Pierce?
Yeah, I had a couple of things. I'm not going to mention the police and fire recognition, but other than to say I was there and I thought it was a great event. and it should be annual, but that's all I'll say. And so kind of two things I had. I had a little bit of fun today, and I did not want to do this, but it ended up being pretty fun. Rebecca Sorensen, in her new role as the director of 50th and France, I think she asked Steph, my wife, to do an Instagram reel, and then somehow I got roped into it. And so we did that this afternoon. So we did lunch at D'Amico's, and she's hired a firm to kind of help stage these things. And so we had lunch, and we talked about eating there, and then we walked over to Evereve and did some shopping, and so they videoed that, and then we went to Farady's, and then did some shopping for me, and then we talked about why we love 50th in France, and ended by saying, all right, that was fun, we got to go catch a movie across the street, and then we did that. And so I just think Rebecca is going to do an awesome job in that role, just trying to, doing different things to just raise the number of people that are exploring and using that area. So I thought that was a neat idea. And as we did it, we did talk to a few of the businesses, and they talked about the fact that some of the traffic is slow, hoping that it'll pick up because the weather has been so nice. But that was a fun thing that we did today. And then the other thing I wanted to mention is that next week, Senator Warnock is here in St. Paul, and I got an invite to a little private event for that as well. So I'm looking forward to doing that on the 15th. That's it.
Jackson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I got a number of things actually this evening. So I went down to Lobby Day for the schools, and I was talking with Mr. Griggs, who helped with the students do history projects. And 40 Edina projects were presented to the district competition. Over half received special recognition, and 17 projects with 32 historians are advancing onto state. And I've been working on a number of history projects in town recently, and I was just so proud to see the next generation of kids really proud to look at history and to learn more about it. So I wanted to recognize that. And connected with that, the Connecting with Kids breakfast is this Friday. The Edina Community Foundation recognizes students and adults who have invited students into their lives and connected with them to help them grow into the strong adults that we want them all to be. So I'm looking forward to that. I wanted to say thank you to Clerk Allison and her election staff and all of the election judges. We had another successful election. And I didn't look at the turnout numbers last night, but we did it, and we've got 4 more to go, 1 down, 4 to go. So if you are interested, especially if you're a Republican in being an election judge, please contact Clerk Allison. But thank you to everybody for another successful election. And then finally, last Saturday, as I mentioned before, we had the first event that was a Crime Prevention Fund recognition event. And the first award our mayor gave out to former Mayor Denny Metzold. And Denny Metzold formed the Community Crime Prevention Fund in 1970. And there's been a little chitter-chatter in the community about, well, why don't we have a rewards program for catching criminals? And we do. It was founded in 1970, and just an extraordinary program that has grown over the years to supplement our police operations, but always as offering rewards for when we need to find somebody, and it's been a successful program. So I just wanted to have a shout out, say thank you to former Mayor Metzold and to everybody who was part of that event, but also just a general recognition that we have so many wonderful community organizations in this community. And that's one of the reasons I love living here, is just so many engaged people. So thank you.
Marissa.
I'm the one that has the document that Jennifer's going to put up. But this is from the 494 corridor, information about things that are happening, coming to us. And there is an event, if people are interested in finding out about detours ahead in 2024, which is an exciting topic. Wednesday, March 13th, 11:30 a.m. until 12:30 p.m. It's a free webinar. And there's a little code you can click on. Also, there's a registration thing, and I think Jennifer will get it focused in a moment. But again, this is, something people may want to be aware of as you are tootling about. Things will be changing, and so it's good to know that. So thank you for putting that up.
That's it? Okay. State of the community. Jennifer, Friday, noon. Braemar, that's it? And then when you mentioned connecting with kids, I'm going to be on a panel for the Regional Chamber of Commerce downtown at the Depot on Friday morning. And I got to remember what the topic is, but I can't remember. But so anyway, closer to home, I got a nice email from, you remember we renominated Steve Sando to be on the Minnehaha Creek Watershed District Board. He was reappointed. He was so excited to serve another 3 years. So that was great. And then Member Pierce and Member Jackson both mentioned the Saturday evening first responders public safety event. I thought one of the things that worked out really nicely was I had asked Elizabeth Couts, the mayor of Burnsville, if she'd care to come up Saturday night and have something positive, because she's had 2 really tough weeks for town. Her police force, her firefighters really been rough. And she was so complimentary about the city of Edina and the way we've helped out the city of Burnsville. And I thought her remarks were so well placed, and it was kind of a special treat having her here. So thanks for that, Mayor Coates. Chad, I was looking over, somebody mentioned something about streets, and it made me think about Hillary Lane, right, the street around the north side of the golf course. As it gets nice now, that's like third world over there. Is that on the list this year finally?
Sorry to say it's not. Nope, it's in our CIP. We'll look at that again with the CIP this year. The problem, it's a state aid route.
Well, can't we just mill and overlay the thing? I mean, it's like...
We're looking at that. We actually just talked to Public Works about doing some skim coats there, just getting it to the next cycle. So
we did a piece of it last year, as I recall.
We did the trail piece because we had concerns with the trail portion.
Yeah, we did.
Okay. And then I had in our mail, not the one you guys are all thinking about, I had another piece of mail from a little young lady who lives in our town, is over on Kellogg, Maya Wetterlin. And she says, I think, dear Mayor Hovland, I think we should have a donation holiday. One reason I think this is because the people without homes will get a lot of donations and they would feel good. Another reason is because children would get more. So Maya, thanks for thinking so much of others. And we'll talk about that with some of our foundation people, that maybe a donation day in Edina on a broad basis is an interesting idea. So thanks for planting that seed for us. And then, Monday night, I made a one-day run out to Washington, D.C. I got an email from a guy named Jeff Sonnenfeld, who was a prof at Yale. He said, hey, how come you haven't signed up for the Yale Mayor's College? And they pay all of the travel and the hotel accommodations. And so I ended up going out there just for one day because we had all this activity going on today. Usually they have the mayors the first day, about 50 mayors, and then they had 50 CEOs with the mayors on the second morning, and they were going to have Sullivan there this morning, Jake Sullivan, the National Security Advisor. Yesterday, and this is for Director Milner, CISA was really insistent that we all get a hold of them because they are so concerned about our infrastructure being at risk, especially our water systems. And there was a woman there who runs one of the West Coast utilities, and she said they're averaging 9 successful cyber attacks per day on utilities in the United States, coming from foreign sources. And the FBI was there too, that was dealing with that same issue. The fellow we had a public safety portion. The fellow who was the chief of the Capitol Police was there. He came in after January 6th, came back, and is leading them again. And he said that in 2016, I think I get this right, there were 2,000 threats against members of Congress, and last year there were 9,000 threats against members of Congress. So he said, if you've got any coming to an event in your town, let them know. They'll provide the funding for the PD to provide the security for any member of Congress, senator or representative. So we should be mindful of that as well. Those are just a couple of quick things from yesterday. Pretty intriguing day. And that's it for me. Anybody else have anything? Okay. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Jackson moves, member Agnew and member Pierce leap to the second. We got any further discussion? All those in favor of adjourning, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. We stand adjourned.